You
Okay.
tell me.
All right. All right. Three, two, one. Welcome, 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 everybody. We have a very special guest. Thank you for joining us today. If you are here already, we have Amaury Séchet, the lead developer of Bitcoin ABC. Um, Anything else you want to add to your intro?
No, that's fine. That's a good intro.
All right, we nailed it. All right, so first thing I want to cover. So let's turn back the clock here. Can you kind of tell me how Bitcoin Cash came to be? Like, I know the whole scaling debate and everything, but like the actual people involved in creating Bitcoin Cash the months beforehand, before it actually happened.
Yeah, so there was not that many people actually, to be honest. It was on the coding side, it was mostly Free Trader and myself. Free Trader was anonymous. He doesn't do interviews and stuff like that, but you can find him online. And myself. And then we had support from a few miners, such as Jianwu and Hypo Yang from Bitmain and via BTC. Then there was Jonald Fugball, who ran Electron Cash and made various websites happen and stuff like that. So and then a bunch of people did little stuff, but mostly the engine behind it was this group of people.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, it wasn't Roger, right?
No, no. Roger joined after Segwit 2x was cancelled.
Gotcha. And so we'll just get this out of the way. I think the biggest disagreement that the people active in Bitcoin Cash has right now is the color of the logo. Uh, so I'm obviously Camp Green, if people didn't know, and you're obviously Camp Yellow or Orange, or however you want to represent yourself. Could you kind of give your reasoning for why you would like to keep the Bitcoin Cash logo orange?
Um, I mean, this is how it was when it was launched, and so there is this stuff in software called bike shading, and it comes from I don't remember who that was, but someone made the observation that if you are building like a nuclear power plant or something like that, right? You're gonna have discussion about or the fission core, the fusion core is gonna work and all of that, and very little people are gonna have any opinion about that, right? And then um, maybe you're gonna talk about the room for the personnel, when they have their break, what does it look like? And suddenly, like a lot of more people have a lot of more input to give about that, and suddenly the meeting about that stuff start to take much longer. And then you have the discussion of what color are you gonna paint the bike shed, and everybody has an opinion about that because everybody understands what a bike shed is and what painting is, and anyone that is not colorblind understands colors, right? So suddenly everybody has an opinion about that, and you end up taking more an absurd amount of time in terms of discussion and resources, attention, brain cycle of the people involved in the project, whereas the impact of that stuff is actually not that great. And at the end of the day, you'd be better off to pick something and stay, keep it and stay with it.
Mhm. But so so I guess I'll give my so I think Bitcoin Cash does have to differentiate itself from Bitcoin Core a little bit at least. Like I know we have the cash attached to it, but as for like we are the minority fork, and so we do have to do some concessions. And of course, I completely understand you saying the nuclear power plant because I have no idea about any opcodes. But hey, I know colors, so here we go. But the green kind of it differentiates. I know one argument you do have for the orange is that you think it sticks out more than the green. But yeah, I mean, I think the green just sticks out more, or I think the green is one, it differentiates, and two, it's like the color of cash, like the color of money, although not throughout the whole world, but like the greenback, I suppose.
Yeah, a bunch of I have a bunch of notes here, and they are all like all kind of colors. Like they're like Hong Kong dollar bill, they are red.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
That I think. What is that? Oh, it's purple. It's Hong Kong dollar as well. I have a bunch of crap in there.
So will we?
This is pounds. They are blue. You know, like it's just very. It's a very American idea that cash is supposed to be green.
Right. But
Yeah.
hey, world reserve currency, right?
Well, hopefully not for long.
Was that? Sorry.
Hopefully not for long.
Yeah, hopefully not for long, right? Okay. So I don't think we'll come to an agreement on the color here, but I think it's fun to poke around. But again, like I think it is like a branding problem too. Like we are this like decentralized thing, and it's like people are using orange, people are using green, and so some people do get confused, and so it's like it's not super helpful that there is this going on, but it's like this
Well,
thing.
that was my point since day one. Since day one, I've been saying that it's just not helpful. Like whatever the end decision of that thing end up being, the energy that has been spent making that decision happen is like absolutely not worth it. Whatever the benefit of the decision at the end is.
So you can just we'll just go with green then. All right. All right. So you're often called the benevolent dictator. You are a self-titled benevolent dictator of Bitcoin ABC, and Bitcoin ABC is the main leading implementation for Bitcoin Cash. And so, can you kind of describe what like the benevolent dictator role means?
Yeah, so it's actually fairly common in open source software. It's a term that is commonly used in open source software. I think the first person for which it have been used is Guido van Rossum, who made the programming language Python. People started calling it benevolent dictator, and then that's a term that kind of stick, right? So when you build some software, at some point, if people don't agree, you gotta have someone that makes the decision. And for like every single software out there is someone that is able to make that decision, and that person is effectively the benevolent dictator of the software project. But it's not as fun as being the dictator of a country. It's not like it's not like you can tax people and drink expensive wine with the proceeds and send everyone that disagree to jail or whatever. But that's the term that is commonly used.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of often used as an argument against Bitcoin Cash. Is like, hey, you guys have a dictator that decides everything, but like you often say, or if people don't agree with what you have to say, they can just fork and do their own thing, right?
Yeah, and apparently they did.
Yeah, that's true. And so yeah, that happens. So I mean, you're in control until somebody.
It's very different from what people understand by dictatorship in general, because even though you have someone that makes the decision, what is different is that when you have a dictator in the country, you don't have any exit option, right? Like usually they won't let you get out. But in that case, people are free to use a different software or not use any software at all, or do something else, use another cryptocurrency. People have a bunch of options, right? So it's not like you can impose something that people really don't want on them. Because what's going to happen is, like, effectively you can do that, but what's going to happen is that everybody is going to leave and use something else. Right. So that's a bit of a different option, and that's how most open source software projects have been run for quite some time. It's like a proven model.
So do you think like Vladimir is the benevolent dictator of Bitcoin Core?
Yeah, effectively it is. Though what happened in practice is that is a very conflict avoidant kind of person. So he avoids making decision as much as possible. It's the way he's approaching the role that he has. But at the end of the day, he's the one who push the merge button. So if he doesn't want to do it, then it's not gonna get in.
Right. Makes sense. So going back to, I'm just have this list here, but going back to Roger. So I was The Starkness scandal. We can kind of. I know it's a stupid name. Just bear with me. So Roger obviously did the whole thing where he's like, "Oh, Jack, of CEO of Twitter, is probably sleeping with Elizabeth Stark because why else would he like Lightning Labs? Because it doesn't make any sense." And that was first done on my show, and then he like tweeted about it later, and then Amaury, you kind of roasted me in a tweet. And I'm still salty, man. But yeah, can you kind of like describe why you like disagree with his whole like bringing that up to begin with?
Well, because it's kind of self-defeating. Well, to begin with, like, put yourself in the shoe of people in the other side of it. Why, like, why would they cooperate with you when you are spreading this kind of rumor about them? It's kind of like the fact that you're spreading that rumor completely demolished the whole reason for which you are putting that rumor up there to begin with. Plus, it's like very poor style. It reflects very badly on the community, I think, to take this kind of action. So, yeah, it's not the image that we want to put out there.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's just like a annoying rumor that doesn't need to be out. But I guess it was fun to meme for a little bit. But yeah, it's something that just like says nothing. So, so yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, on the internet, people are poking fun at each other, but sometimes we forget that those are actually real people on the other side of it. And you have like this tribal mentality that exists on both sides. Like the people on the core side, they also tend to involve in this kind of behavior as well. But I think it's not healthy on any side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of tribalism, did you see this tweet today by Peter McCormick? So it was this article that says Bitcoin Cash just trumped Bitcoin in Venezuela when it comes like physical merchant adoption. And then Peter says people in a country with a stupid currency now have the option of replacing it with another stupid currency. So
well, good for them. They have more choice, and the more choice they have, the better they are.
Yeah. It's just dumb maximalism. Like people are using the crypto and they're like, oh, it's just stupid because he doesn't like Roger. I guess.
Yeah, that's very bizarre. And this whole idea of using crypto now for like a subset of the crypto community have become like a stupid thing to do in their eyes. It's very strange because if the currency has no utility, it's effectively a Ponzi scheme. Right. Or I don't know, a Ponzi scheme is not quite the right word because like it's not technically a Ponzi, but it's like a greater fool kind of game.
Right.
You're buying into that store of value because you think that tomorrow you're going to be able to sell your coin for more to someone else. But you always have to ask yourself, where is that value coming from? And if that value comes from the fact that the currency is useful and so like people find value in it and so there is value created in that word, then it may be a win-win kind of game. But if the currency is not useful in itself except that you're going to sell it to someone else in the future for a greater amount of money, you are effectively betting that someone is going to spend more on that tomorrow, but there is no value created in the word because of that. So it's a win-lose game.
Right.
So it's a negative sum game because you have to pay fees and exchange and spread and so it's a negative sum game.
Yeah.
Some people maybe are gonna make money out of that, but most people are gonna lose money out of that game.
Right. The whales will make money and everybody else gets wrecked. Do you think using Bitcoin as a store of value, aka hodling, is using it? Like I use Bitcoin by holding it. Is that a valid sentence?
Well, it's kind of weird because hodling is really the I don't know, like the definition would be like not using it. You put it somewhere, you store it, and you don't use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, there is nothing wrong with hodling per se. But as mentioned, like if hodling is the only part of the game, then it's a negative sum game. So more people are gonna lose money than make money out of that game. You need something that creates value in the ecosystem. If there is no value created, then you're just shuffling around the value that exists.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's just yeah. Again, it's the greater fool thing.
Yep.
We'll talk about so the title of this. I don't know if you saw it, but it's not a it's not a fork. It's an upgrade. And so of course technically it's a hard fork because if you run a node that's older, it's not going to be able to sync with the new blocks. But yeah, do you want to kind of describe what is gonna these? I know one of the smaller upgrades that we have as far as like features in it. But would you want to kind of describe what we're looking at here?
Yeah, though, yeah, as you mentioned, those are maybe features that most users are not gonna see very much, but they are cleaning up some stuff. So you got to understand, like the basic problem behind scaling is that you can grow the capacity bigger and all of that, but it grows any problem that you have bigger with it. And so, like say you have a golf cart, and there is one of the wheel that is kind of squeaky and whatever, like you don't really care, right? But if suddenly you strap a rocket on it, you want like the wheel to be like just right, or everything is gonna explode and you're gonna die. And this is kind of the idea behind it. Like every small problem start to become a big problem when you increase the scale of the system. And so amongst the change that we do, we change the way, or rather we extend the way check multisig works, because all the old way is still gonna work. So if people don't upgrade their wallet and whatnot, it's not gonna change anything. And so we upgrade it in various ways. One of the ways that it's not going to support Schnorr signature that we deployed for other signature operation in the system, but not multisig. And it also, so the way multisig works right now is kind of dumb, because maybe I should explain what the multisig is. A multisig is like when you have several people that need to sign a transaction, or that need to sign some coin for them to be spent. And so what happened is that you say, for instance, you have like 3 people that can sign, and you need to provide 2 signature, right? So in the script, you're gonna provide 3 public key for the 3 people that can sign. And then 2 of those people are gonna provide a signature to unlock the coin. And the way the system works is that it's gonna take the first signature and check it against the first public key and see if the signature verify or not. And if it doesn't verify, then it goes to the next public key and see if that verifies or not. Because it doesn't know what signature corresponds to what public key. So potentially, like even if you have a 1 out of 15 multisig, for instance, you have 15 public key and one of them need to sign. Well, potentially you're gonna do 15 signature check to get up to the last public key and verify that it match. And so that's absurdly expensive, right? Like you do 15 times more computation that you need to do in that specific scenario. So the way the multisig works with Schnorr is altered slightly so that there is a system to express what signature goes with what public key. And yeah, so that's essentially a dose vector here that can be fixed going forward.
Gotcha.
So there is that, and there is another change that is about malleability. So there are various ways to malleate transactions, and yeah, we try to improve the system so that there are less and less way to malleate transactions, such as regular and standard transaction are non-malleable at this point.
Does this mean we can put Lightning Network on Bitcoin Cash now?
Not as this. You would have to do a few tweaks to it, but yeah.
Awesome. It's exactly what I want.
Well, this whole 8 on Lightning, I think, is not very healthy either.
Yeah.
Either it's a good tech and it's gonna work and people are gonna use it, or it's a bad tech and it's gonna fail and people are not gonna use it. But either way, there is no way to bash it. There's no good reason to bash it, really. It's using way too many brain cycle, I think. People are spending way too much time thinking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I did some videos like a while back about it, and just like, I like to call it like a boondogglement technology. Like, it's look cool, and like, again, it can be useful for specific things. Nobody's saying that, but it's not like a complete replacement of the blockchain, which is kind of what it's being advertised as. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
at this point, I'm just like, yeah, like you said, it's just like not worth the time to keep up with it at all. Like it's just not worth.
yeah, I think it's been a bit oversold. Like the promise that have been made on Lightning Network are a bit over the top. And what is interesting is that those are usually not the people actually working on Lightning Network making those promises,
Right.
but those are usually like community leaders, kind of people. They try to get you to buy their bags essentially. They're telling you, oh, you have this Lightning Network and it's gonna solve every single problem under the sun and change, revolutionize everything. Where really, you should expect it to serve well some use cases, but it's like really the characteristic of Lightning Network are quite different from the characteristics of raw blockchain transactions. And so you should expect that it's probably going to be better for some use case, but it's not going to be better for all use cases. I don't expect that to be the case at all.
Right. I mean, like if for some reason you have the need to like send tens of thousands of transactions back and forth to between two people, like yeah, Lightning Network and a payment channel would be good for that. But even then, it's like, do you need the whole network or do you just need the payment channel? So, yeah, again, again, there's specific use cases. Again, we don't want to, like you said, it's kind of not worth the brain cells. So, so moving on. So lately on Telegram and a little bit on Twitter and on Reddit, you've been going what you self-described John Wick mode, and basically. You're kind of calling out all the bad actors as you see them much sooner than you would before. And this is kind of, as I understand, a reaction from the whole SV thing when people didn't really call out the bullshit hard enough, and it kind of just like killed the value of Bitcoin Cash and SV.
Well, it's not just SV. It's because I've seen the kind of pattern that led to SV happen repeating themselves. And so, I think it's Einstein that say, like if you keep doing the same thing and expect different result, then it's kind of the definition of stupidity. So you got to do something else. And there is a bit of a danger to that, right? Because you don't want to instill the idea that if you say it's bad, then like people should believe you and just chastise whoever, because then you create very perverse incentives, and so ideally you would like to tell people, hey, like this kind of behavior, they are usually indicative of someone that have ulterior motives, and then people can figure out who has this kind of behaviors. But I've been much more direct and upfront about this kind of stuff because my previous approach maybe did not quite work as well as I would have hoped.
Yeah, I mean, to like a normal person looking in at what can be described as like technobabble, it's very, very difficult to kind of differentiate what's like real and what's kind of like down this path of just like what are you talking about? And so yeah, I mean, it's good to have like experts that know the code and people like you and other people. Imagine a username is one who's always like on the ball with that type of shit. Just like call it out, and then you can, like me as a normal person, can like actually like look at it and try and break it down and see like what actually doesn't make sense in this and why is it bullshit. And it's like trying to keep I mean, it's not like thought police, it's just like stupidity police. I don't know, it's like
but it's not just that. Like you're always gonna have some people that want to create some chaos so that they can make a name for themselves, right? That's kind of like the Trump strategy.
right.
You shake everything, and then everybody needs to pay attention to you because you're just shaking everything, right? And the thing is with then it depends what is the culture of the community. It's gonna shape what is the reaction to this kind of behavior. And one of the problem is that the community that we have right now is quite sensible to this kind of behavior, even though much less now. It's gotten much better. But if the community is not very good at calling out this kind of behavior, then you find yourself in a situation where it's very beneficial for the people that want to get influence in the space to take action that are actually negative for BCH as a whole, but that's gonna increase their position and influence within the space. And as that happen, they grow bigger, and then this is how you end up in SV land.
And how he ends up with the new kids on the blockchain. Coinspice shirt. Check out their store. It's great. No, yeah, I agree. It's a slippery slope, and if somebody gains traction on their bullshit, it can just kind of snowball out of control. So catch it early. There was a question from Reddit. Let me just read it off real quick. Something about the Mark Lundyberg in the last developer meeting asked about the 520 stack item limit, and apparently it was just kind of ignored by you. And I guess just what your thoughts on the 520 stack item limit? I personally don't know what it means. So
many thought about it, to be honest. I would like to see, what are actually the use cases and all of that are that necessitate to increase that. I don't have, I don't have enough background there to have an informal opinion at this time.
Gotcha. It's like it kind of goes into the whole process of like what to upgrade, right? It's if you want to upgrade the 520 stack limit, let's have a reason why you want to do it, and then you got to go through the whole process of
because every time you increase something, you essentially increase various attack surfaces on the system in general. Some of them that we know of, and some of them that we may discover in the future as well, right? So you gotta always you need to be careful and make sure that this is delivering actual value. And ideally you want to do as much as possible outside of the consensus layer. The consensus layer have this problem that everybody needs to play by the same rules, right? So say someone wants native token and someone doesn't want native token, then what's happening in that case? Well, if we put native token in the consensus layer, then everybody has to do native tokens. And because value is subjective, it's very difficult to know if that's the right trade-off or not. So whatever that is, if you have an option to do it somewhere else than in the consensus layer, it's always better. But sometimes it's just better to do it in the consensus layer. But in that case, you need to have like a very strong case. Like, what is the use case of doing it in the consensus layer? What is the kind of expectation? What is also the negative externality that's going to be imposed on everybody else going forward? This kind of stuff.
Gotcha. A question from Edward Kelso. What do you think of Jonald's podcast with Coinspice?
Oh, I think it was great. I think Jonald is a brilliant writer. He's written like very, very many absolutely awesome pieces, and he doesn't do that many interviews, so that was great to have him on an interview talking about his ideas.
Yeah, I actually asked him to come on the show, and he didn't want to dox his face, so we'll get him sometime. So yeah, there's a meetup happening in London soon. Apparently Roger's going to be there. Can you tell me more about that?
There's a meetup that is organized by blockchain.info. Well, that is, I think it's blockchain.com now, but I'm not all far in the industry, so for me it's always gonna be blockchain.info in my mind. They are organizing a BCH meetup in London. They want to have like various people from the community, trying to, there are gonna be probably like a few speech and then meetup of the people that are interested in BCH.
Gotcha. Yeah, sounds pretty big. Yeah, speaking of just like meetups and Bitcoin Cash in real life, I met you in real life in Australia. We had some drinks, anyways, not about that. But yeah, just spending Bitcoin Cash in person. That was kind of like the first time I've spent it more than like one time, like in a row. Like I was literally spending Bitcoin Cash for like a whole week there. Can you kind of describe what that was like as you like seeing your project kind of being like handled in real life?
Yeah, that was awesome. I as a project, to not use actual currency at all. And actually, almost managed to do it, but I had like once we went on magnetic island, and we had to pay for the boat, and the boat did not take BCH. So I had to spend fiat currency to get my boat ticket, but everything else for the whole duration of the whole stuff was paid for in BCH.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome. One, for the simple fact that you don't have to get fucked by exchange rates at like airports or wherever the hell you do exchanges, currency exchanges.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. I mean, again,
yeah. So when you are at home, using your credit card, it's not very expensive, and so it's all good and fine. But when you are at the other side of the world, you have like exchange rate, and then you usually have fees because it's in some other country and whatever. Plus, sometimes you get, your credit card flagged or whatever because you are not where you're supposed to be according to the bank.
Yeah.
So for traveling, I think there is a very strong use case for cryptocurrency.
Yeah, definitely. I was just like, yeah, it's just like weird using it constantly. Like I eventually set up the instant pay on Crescent Cash where when you scan like a BIP 70, it just like automatically sends. I set that up after like my first payment. I literally just like scan it and put it in my pocket. It was just like so easy. It's like the most seamless way you can do.
Yeah, this is probably something that we want to do in the wallets, with like some threshold amount. So,
Right.
if it's less than $20, then you don't need to do anything. If it's more than that, then you need to, type a PIN or something. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. The Crescent has that threshold thing just in case. Like
we actually have that in France for credit card. Like all the credit card in France now have an NFC technology in them, and all the merchant by now have appropriate terminals. And I think the limit is €30 if I'm not mistaken, or 35, or like something like that. But essentially, if the amount is low, you can just pay without contact, and just where you need to type a PIN or whatever. Like you just have the terminal and you put your card on it, and that's it. You paid. Yeah. But if it's gonna be larger amount of money, then you need to insert your card into the machine and type your PIN, because I guess the banks want higher level of security for higher amount of money. It's all
right.
It's all about trade-off, convenience versus security. There's always trade-off made there.
Yeah, as like an American, you don't realize like how shitty our point of sale systems are, like compared to the rest of the world. Obviously, like there's like NFC isn't a thing in America, like at all. In France and Australia,
no, many cards still use the magnetic band.
Yeah, well, now it's like you insert the chip into the terminal, wait like 3 seconds, and then maybe pull it out. You have to like wait. It's either like 3 to 10 seconds to pull it out again. And
Actually,
you put your PIN.
I lived in the US for 3 years, for people who don't know. So I actually have a fair amount of experience with that. It's pretty bad. And if you add the whole tipping culture on top of it,
oh my God,
you end up doing 2 round trip of that game. Yeah. It's just a bad experience. But for some reason, people in the US, they don't really expect anything else. So.
Yeah, we're just like used to just like the slowest part of the checkout process is using.
Yeah, this is something I noticed in many countries, is that when you have some technology that is adopted first, and actually the US adopted credit card fairly early on compared to the rest of the world. But then you have like a larger user base that expects something, and there is not as much of an incentive to go to the next technology, right? And so what happened is that you're gonna have some other country that did not do the first step right away, that are gonna leapfrog it completely. One good example of that is internet in Romania. So I don't know if you're familiar, but Romania has like crazy fast internet for absurdly cheap prices. And the reason is, it used to be a communist country. So it took like, several years to get the country back in shape to, to be able to deploy infrastructure like internet and stuff like that. Like they come out of the communist era completely wrecked, essentially, like, all communist country. And so they did not really adopt the early technology that we use for internet. before, and so they right away deployed optical fiber, and so they have like this ultra modern optical fiber network, and it's cheap. It's the only thing that there is anyway, right? So maybe the slowest internet connection that you can buy must be something like 300 megabit per second. And there is nothing slower than that because they never add the previous technology, right? And you see the same kind of stuff in Africa, in a lot of countries. They don't have a fixed phone network like landline, but they have mobile phone, right? They directly jump to mobile phone. They did not develop the infrastructure for landline phones, and you see that in many, you see that in many countries. It's kind of an interesting stuff. I think you have the reverse of that happening in the US with credit cards, where the US went into credit card very early on, and now it's kind of happy with what it has. There is better, but is it worth, is it worth the hassle to change like every single terminal and every single credit card that people have,
right?
To get the new technology deployed? I'd say probably at this point, but this is because we had several technology of credit card. Like there was the chip, and then there was, contactless. We call that, NFC. So not that there is NFC is probably worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of NFC, that new Tobias Ruck and I think that's NFC, the little credit card that he had, where you could just like pay with a card, Bitcoin Cash, sign it and everything. That's it. That's the user experience. I mean, like you don't have to have internet. It's like really the biggest one. Because like I was in like
it's quite challenging. It's quite challenging to do that on Bitcoin in a way that is secure. So he's making some trade-off about security, but it's okay. Like the merchant can rip you off, but they cannot rip you off for a lot of money, and then they're gonna lose a customer. But I think one of the big challenge that we have in the user experience right now is that you need to be connected to the internet to pay. And the whole pipeline don't make any sense. Like you have your phone, you scan, a payment request from the payment terminal with your phone, either via QR code or NFC, and then your phone is gonna make a transaction to fulfill that payment request and sign it. And instead of sending it to the terminal so that the terminal can check it, it's gonna send it to the network, and then the terminal is connected to some other server. And the server is swifting all the transaction that goes on the network to try to find yours. And when it finds yours, it sends back to the terminal the information that it has yours. Like it's very strange, right? It's like I make it, like if we want to make it more palatable for people, it's like I'm writing down a check for you, if I'm paying, if I'm paying you for whatever reason by check, but like not that many people do that now, but it used to be a common way to do it, and it's a way, it's a good analogy. So I write on the check, but instead of giving it to you, I'm putting in a giant box where all the check that everybody is making is going, right? And then you got to pay someone to go watch into that box, try to find the check that I made that is for you. It's a completely absurd process. And this is effectively what the computer are doing on the network right now to process payments. And it's bad in many ways. So one of the reasons it's bad is that it's not going to scale very well. Like you can imagine that if, 10 times more people start writing check, the person that's going to have to dig into that box to try to find your check is going to have bigger and bigger of a problem to do so. But it's also bad in terms of user experience, because now you need to be online, and in that metaphor, online means you need to be, you need to have a way to put your check in that box. Whereas I'm already in communication with the payment terminal at this point, right? So it would be much better to send it to the payment terminal. The terminal can verify that the transaction is correct and broadcast it on the network, or not. That's the merchant's problem if they don't want to get paid. But that would work without internet. Like if you have spotty internet, then the payment is going to be slow, bad user experience. And we were talking about being abroad, right? Typically when you're abroad, you don't have very good internet because you're roaming. So
Yeah,
So it would be much better if, you know, the payment terminal is the one connected to the internet and connected to your phone or whatever device you use to pay, and they just talk to each other, figure it out, and then it's sent to the internet. The device should not have to communicate to the internet that much.
Yeah,
This is one of the things that EHF, you know, like, it's cool because it's NFC, but it's also cool because the chip card doesn't have to know anything.
Right.
It doesn't know anything very interesting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, I was in, like, basically the outback of Australia, up in between Cairns and Townsville, and yeah, the internet was just like so spotty there. We were at some bakery and people were just like waiting forever with their wallets on their phone, just like broadcasting, just loading and loading. Just like, well, what are you gonna do? But yeah, it's like the merchant is like almost always connected to the internet because, like, like you said, they want to get paid, and they do for credit cards in general.
Well, plus they are in their shop, right?
Right.
So the probably have internet there to begin with. They have like some dedicated line, a subscriber line.
Right. I mean, even if you're like talking extreme, like in the third world, and they are a vendor and they just have like their phone, that's still internet that you can use and send it to.
Well, it's still better if only one of the two phones need to be connected to the internet rather than the two of them, right? Like, if you have two of them that are connected to the internet, you have like twice as many chance that something goes wrong and doesn't work properly.
Right. Yeah, definitely agree with you. So yeah, looking at the Bitcoin Cash roadmap here for ABC, one thing that's been on people's mind is pre-consensus. Basically to make ZeroConf more secure. And Avalanche, as I understand, is right now like the most known kind of way of doing this. Can you talk about where that stands as far as putting it into Bitcoin Cash? Can we do it do we have to do it as a hard fork? Can mine just start doing it, or kind of how does that work?
It's actually not a fork at all, technically, because it's not in the consensus layer. Though it impacts the consensus quite a bit. I would, if we deploy that, I would advise to not mine with a node that doesn't understand that technology. But technically, it doesn't change any of the consensus rule, right? So I think there is something that is not very well understood about Bitcoin when most people talk about it, but it's actually the most important feature of Bitcoin. So you have a set of rules that are called the consensus rules that say what is valid and what is not valid, right? So if I send money to you, then I need to send a transaction. I need to have the money to begin with. I need to be able to make a signature that proves that I have the money to begin with. I need to not send the same money to someone else, and this kind of stuff. So there is a set of rules that I need to respect for my transaction to be valid. And those are called the consensus rules. But this is not new with Bitcoin. Like we knew how to make a computer system that accept data that respect various rules before. Like essentially, computer have been doing that ever since there was computer. So it's not where the breakthrough is, but it's not sufficient to do digital cash, and you need to have something more, and that is, I can make a transaction that is 100% valid for all the consensus rules that exist, and I can make a second one that is also valid with all the consensus rules that exist, but the two of them cannot be valid at the same time, right? For instance, if they spend the same money, both of them cannot be valid at the same time. And you can actually prove mathematically that there is no way for you to write any set of rules that don't have that problem. It's impossible. So you need to have a system that distinguishes between two valid states. They need to choose one of them and decide, okay, we're all going to agree that this one is the one that everybody's agree on and everybody's using, and this other one we're going to reject. And the only way Bitcoin is able to do that right now is essentially by mining the blockchain, and whatever chain is the longest is going to be the valid one. But it's a very slow process, and for various reasons, this is not a process that you can speed up that much. I mean, you can speed up a little. Maybe you can get it on to a few minutes, but at the end of the day, you cannot get it down to the kind of time that you would want to have. That is, a few seconds. You want to make a payment, and within a few seconds, you want to know this is good, this is not good. And if it says this is good, there is like 99.999% chance that is actually good, right? And so you need a mechanism that is faster than that to make these kind of decisions. And hopefully there have been a lot of research that have been done over the past few years. And the most promising technology to do that is as you mentioned, a technology called Avalanche. And so people are working on that, mostly Tyler Smith from Open Bazaar and is working on BCHD on that. I'm also working indirectly on that because I'm working on some lower level infrastructure that need to happen to make that happen on top of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess my question is say Avalanche chooses one transaction, but so can a miner not choose the other transaction, or can he still because of proof of work, or like how? Does that make sense? That question makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So there are different ideas on how to nail all the details of that. There are various variations of of process that can be used there, and people are still actively discussing which one is best. But the way I see it is that if Avalanche has made a decision on a transaction, and a miner mine a block that have a double span of that transaction in the block, then you would run Avalanche against on the block. Like by default, your node is not going to accept it because it's going to be like, okay, there is like a contradiction with what I have, but the block is not invalid. It's just, in storage, if you want to think of it that way. It has not been declared by your node invalid because it's effectively not an invalid block, but it's not the chain you want to be on right now. And you may want to make sure of that by running another round of Avalanche on the block itself rather than on just the transaction. And if everybody agrees with you, then nobody's going to mine on top of that block. And so effectively the block is going to be orphaned very quickly. And there are going to be some confusion for a few minutes, and that's pretty much it. So that's how I envision it. There are also variations of that can happen, but this is the general idea.
Gotcha. So we have a couple questions. They're coming from.
So wait a second. Like I want to explain kind of the trade-off that is being made there.
Yeah.
Is that we are betting on the fact that someone is not gonna maintain one of those chain for like weeks.
Right.
Mining a chain that nobody accepts for weeks, because if someone were able to do that for weeks, then it would create a lot of confusion for SPVs and stuff like that. But who is gonna mine something for weeks with more hash rate than the main chain without being able to sell the tokens anywhere because every single exchange is running a node that's gonna run this technology?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's highly it's highly implausible. I would argue that the guarantee are stronger with that kind of system than they are right now in terms of attacks with a lot of hash.
Gotcha. So, what do you think are the two most important issues facing BCH right now? Two. You can just go with one.
Yeah. I'd say the main issue is probably culture related, where we are very much willing to tolerate behavior that impacts the project negatively. And a lot of it is probably reaction to the fact that, BCH supporter, well, there was no BCH at the time, but people who effectively became BCH community were treated very poorly in Bitcoin subreddit or on Bitcoin Talk or various places like that. And so they don't want to repeat that pattern. But at the same time, you need to have what we call a shelling point in game theory. So some kind of goal that everybody is moving toward, And this goal needs to be clear for everybody because it's a decentralized system, right? So everybody needs to be aware of that goal and moving toward that and be able to deal with the actors that are not, without everybody having to coordinate. And so this is why so in game theory, this problem is creating a sharing point. And this is very necessary, right? Because if we're going to attract big players works on time scale of many months, if not years, right? So if you want Samsung to adopt BCH, or if you want like Amazon or whatever big company, like some dude is going to propose the ID, and then the manager has to approve it, and then the manager have to bring that at some board meeting with other manager, and they have to approve it, and then they're going to talk with the finance department, and they're going to budgetize, and then they're going to pass that on to the HR department, and they're going to build a team and hire people and all of that. And by the time they do anything, 6 months have passed at least, right? This is how big company operate. And so if we are in a situation where you cannot say, okay, here is where this is going, right? And here is what you should expect going forward, then none of those actors are going to get involved, right? Because by the time they are in it 6 months later, they may find themselves with something that is not at all what they expected they would have. So that's extremely bad. And then it trickles down, right? Because you have investor, and the investor, they see that, and so they are gonna probably invest less because this is higher risk asset because you don't know where it's going. So we need to be very careful about having a roadmap and sticking to it, and being willing to call out the people that want to derail things in other direction. And quite often, those people are going to say, oh, this is permissionless innovation or whatever, this kind of stuff. And this is true. This is true because it's a decentralized system. Anybody can come and build anything, but we need to be strong as a community and be able to say, okay, this is cool, or this is not cool. I don't care, but this is not what we are doing. This is not where we are going. And so you can build that if you want, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be Bitcoin Cash. So we need to be willing to say that. And
yeah, kind of building on that.
I think like most of the other problem that we have, they snowball from that. For instance, I think we have accumulated a lot of people that don't have a very positive attitude toward BCH, and most of them are seen as prominent member, but they are not even, they don't have that much skin in the game, and they're perceived as important actor, and they're gonna be willing to act in a way that is detrimental to BCH, that also further their own influence within the project. And this stems from the fact that we don't have very strong sharing point, right? So we can go there, or we can go the other way. It doesn't matter. Everybody's right because decentralization. This leaves a lot of room for this kind of actor to thrive.
Gotcha. Yeah,
and we have a lot of them.
Yeah, kind of building on that. So obviously there's Bitcoin Unlimited, which is another implementation of ABC. And as for example, there was that bounty from Satoshi Dice to raise a 25 transaction unconfirmed chain limits. Reworded that wrong, but thanks for the sub, guy from Twitch. Weird, I didn't even know I was on Twitch. But anyways, so like that was kind of received by you and kind of some other people as kind of like a negative thing because they came out and said, "Hey, we got this. Like we solved it basically," but there was no like formal specification, right? So it's like, how can BU and ABC work together? Is there benefit in doing so? Like, how do you kind of see this, these two implementations working together or not into the future?
Yeah, so the thing is, to begin with, this is a very good example of that dynamic that I was talking about. The 25 transaction limit is something that everybody wants to fix. But you have this other constraint that everybody needs to be using the same policies on the network. Otherwise, you cannot rely on zero conf anymore. And so the details are maybe a bit technical, but that's the basic idea. Like if not everybody has the same rule of what they consider a transaction that they're going to mine or not, then you can leverage those differences in the rules to make a transaction that some nodes are going to accept and not some other nodes. And so the other nodes that don't accept it, then you can, double spend on those nodes. And then depending on who find the block first, one of the two is gonna be found first. So if you find, for instance, 20% of the hash rate of a policy that is different, then what you can do is send a transaction to a merchant and then send a transaction that has this different policy to those 20% of the hash rate, and then you have a 20% chance of double spending successfully. So it's quite important, even though nothing is forcing the different actor to have the same policy, but there is a strong incentive for anyone who value zero conf, like, reliable transactions, cheap, reliable, like, whatever the catchphrase is. Anyone who value that needs to make sure that everybody has the same policies as much as possible. And the whole problem with the approach that was taken to solve that problem is that it's basically impossible, because there is no specification, no nothing. There have been no review process. There have been like not even a buying on the kind of solution that's going to be adopted. But at the same time, you have people from Bitcoin Unlimited that say that they want to enable it by the end of the year. So that makes it impossible for anyone to release something that is compatible with that, or even assess if this is actually a solution that we want, right? Because maybe the solution has some downside that we don't really know about yet. And the only way we would know about it at this point in time is just reverse engineer everything, which is very time consuming. Plus, there are subtle differences between different code bases. And so it's not sure that you would do it correctly. Anyway, the whole way it's being done is very disruptive to value that are very important to the BCH community. And so I think this is an example where, they can do that if they want. They can do that if they want because permissionless innovation. But we need to be very strong as a community that it's not acceptable behavior. And if they want to stay, at the prominent position in the BCH ecosystem, then they must not engage in this kind of behavior. And on the other hand, if we tolerate this kind of behavior as acceptable, then we're going to have more of it, which means that we're not going to have fast, cheap, reliable transactions anymore, which I think is would be a very big loss for everybody involved. And so, that's basically the idea. And then, you can loop that with the fact that recently they voted to sell some BTC for BCH or not, and they ended up voting against it. So Bitcoin Unlimited ended up being an organization that is mostly funded in BTC. Their BCH holding are maybe like 5% of what they hold or something like that. So, so they find themselves in a position where they have much more to gain in terms of influence by creating that mess. And they actually have very little to lose because any loss of value of BCH because of the chaos involved, it's not going to hurt them very badly, right? It's going to hurt like 5% of their holding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's no skin in the game, as 3 even says. I mean, literally, like it's some skin, but I guess their argument is that they're like going on like coins rather than like USD value. So it's like, oh, we have the same amount of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but it's like, no, not really. Not in the real world where you actually, the value of it. Okay, so I did have somebody. So sometimes I do high fives with my guests, and somebody told me this was the what to tell you, and I don't think it's quite right because it's let's hit the balls.
Tapons les couilles.
Here, let me. So.
Tapons les couilles.
That doesn't mean give me a high five, right?
No.
Right.
It's not correct, by the way.
Say that again?
It's not correct, by the way. I have echo right now.
Wait. Oh, sorry. Say that again.
Yeah, it's not correct French. You would say on s'en tape les couilles, which means well, literally it means like eating the balls, yeah. But it would be an idiom to say that we don't really care about that.
All right. Well, high five it then. Come on, high five me, bro.
Oh.
Oh wait.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
what?
weird. It's very
Yeah, it's weird. It's mirror. Okay.
and then to celebrate, we're gonna have some green behind us to represent Bitcoin Cash. All right. I guess you got anything left to say? We just hit an hour, and I usually try and keep it around an hour. But yeah, you have anything else you want to say to the Bitcoin Cash
that's
community?
fine. It's like what maybe people want to know something or whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of watching chats. We got most of. I'm not gonna ask that question. There was something about like businesses. So yeah, I guess we can kind of. I know it was like a BSVS question, but anyways, so like if a business wants something in the protocol, wants you to do something, how do they go about like asking or like advocating for that? Like what's the proper kind of like avenue to for a business to create a change at the consensus level of Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah. So the first thing that they would have to do is that they would have to make a case that this change is beneficial in general, not just for them, but for BCH in general. But as it turns out, if it's useful for them, it's also probably useful for someone else most of the time. So that case, they should be able to make it. But then, they cannot force anyone to work on that stuff. So maybe some people are motivated or some people have the resources to make it happen. But if that's not the case, then either they can get in touch. So we can find, what kind of work it would entail, find a budget, hire someone, or maybe this is also open source, right? So they can hire someone themselves if they want to, and that person can submit patches and stuff. But it's very important before that, because otherwise it's going to be a very frustrating process. It's very important before that they talk about the approach that they want to take. They talk about what they want to change, so that we can make sure that it's actually solving a real problem that exists for everybody. And good avenue to do that would be various work groups. So if they go into the Bitcoin Cash org GitHub repository, there are links to various work groups. So if one of them is, appropriate, then let's go in there. If none of them are appropriate, they can submit a PR to create a new work group if they want to, and then probably talk to the people that work on various implementation, because they are the one that are gonna actually implement the rules. And then depending on what the consensus rule changed, like if the consensus rule have an impact on wallets, for instance, maybe having the feedback from various wallet developers that it's something that is actually good and that they can implement and stuff is, always preferable. It's really like the ins and outs are going to be different depending on what consensus rule they want to change specifically. So all the specifics are going to be a bit different. But yeah, the first step is going to be to contact the people and make the case that it's solving an actual problem that exists on BCH. That would be the first step.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. How close have you come to walking away from Bitcoin Cash?
Oh, many times, very close. I'm gonna be honest here. Sometimes it's very frustrating to work on that project.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you come from like infrastructure, like I think you did like Facebook in China or Japan, one of those two.
Yeah, I did Facebook in Japan and the US, and it's a very different space.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So whatever, like some people don't like Facebook, and that's fine, but there is something that you can remove from Facebook, is that people have their shit together and you work with, like everybody knows what they need to be doing and they do it well. And if something go wrong, they're going to come to you and try to figure out a solution. And this is not how most workplaces work. This is certainly not how BCH works. It's much more dysfunctional than that, or crypto in general, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's a bit frustrating at times.
Yeah, I can imagine. Somebody sent me $5. Thank you. Do you have any recommendations for books on game theory?
Oh, but I don't know really. I'd say play Brood War quite a bit. A lot of Brood War.
Oh, you have a game. Okay, what's it called?
Brood War, StarCraft Brood War.
StarCraft Brood War.
It's like 25 years old game, something like that. It's still like played competitively. There are actually 2 national tournaments in Korea that goes on, and
so don't read, actually play games to learn game theory.
Well, then you're gonna see what you don't understand, right? You're gonna see why you get wrecked and figure out why that is, and so now you're gonna figure out what you need to read. But yeah, I think game theory, honestly, game theory is not learned the best in books. Let's say.
Gotcha. Spice or honk?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever people want.
Do you have an opinion on SLP tokens in general? Do you think there should be a kind of more advanced token protocol, or like what's your kind of opinion on SLP in general?
Well, it seems to be very successful as an ecosystem. Though the way SLP, so it's in the name, like it's a simple ledger protocol, right? So it's simple. It's like it's in the name, and so it's actually very good to do simple stuff because it's simple and you don't have like extra complications. And this is why so many people were able to adopt it so fast, and people have created so many tokens with it. But if you want to do things that are a bit more fancy with a bit more complex smart contract, then that's probably not the good solution. Say you wanted to do something like DAI and make your DAO on BCH, right? You could not do that with SLP. It's not powerful enough. You would need something else. And one of the good things is that none of that is baked into the consensus layer, right? So if someone wants to build another ticket system that is more powerful so that they can make DAI or whatever they want to make, then they're free to do so, and they don't need any kind of authorization from anyone. And it's not gonna impact negatively people that use SLP. It's not gonna question in any way the SLP ecosystem. It's not gonna also question in any way the consensus layer. I think it's actually a pretty good feature. Now, maybe there are a few things that those token systems cannot do without some consensus rule change, something that is important. And one thing that is not clear to me if we can do right now or not, like we cannot do with SLP, but can we do it with like a sufficiently advanced token system, is making a two-way bridge between BCH and some other token that is hosted in one of those systems. And it is not clear to me that this is possible. So maybe this is something we want to add some consensus rules that allows for this kind of feature, but we will have to identify, what is the problem deep down, right? So some people are like, okay, let's just make token in the consensus layer and we can solve that problem. But if we had done that with SLP, for instance, now we would find ourselves, okay, we want to do like more fancy stuff like DAI and stuff like that, and the token that we have in the consensus rule cannot do that, and it's very complicated to change them. So what is better is finding like what is that small piece that is missing, so that we can build those kind of token systems that do what we want, and why it is that this piece is missing. And then we can devise a solution that solves that problem specifically, and not push a solution down the road. I think very good. There was a very good quote from Tobias, that make the NFC card that we talked about earlier. It was like, okay, I was able to build that because of many of the features that have been implemented across the hard fork in the history of BCH. And to me, that's a great indicative that we have done our job right, because we have not developed a feature that say, okay, this is the feature to do NFC, and now you have to do it that way, and the consensus rule are that way, right? We have taken an approach where here is the fundamental problem that prevent people from building those kind of stuff. Let's fix just that problem, and then people can build this kind of stuff on top of it. And so maybe it's less flashy, right? You cannot make the big announcement like, oh, we have this and that at the consensus layer. But where it's good is that it doesn't shoehorn everybody into one solution. And people are probably going to build different kind of solution with different trade-off, because, it's usually how it is, right? Like usually you have to make trade-off when you build something, and not everybody is interested by making the same trade-offs. So I think it's a much better approach.
Gotcha. Here's another one. Do you have any side projects beyond Bitcoin Cash and or hobbies?
Yeah, so I play music quite a bit actually these days. I have my guitar and my bass behind me. I play some piano as well. Um, I would say I'm not a super talented musician, but enough. I play enough to have fun and understand how that works. So that's good. I don't know. Yeah, Rubik's Cube, obviously. Even though a bit less these days, but people know me for that. I used to be very competitive about it. I did a lot of competition. Um, yeah, pretty much. I don't know.
Gotcha.
I do a lot of stuff. I'm a bit of a learning junkie in general, so I learn a lot of stuff.
Nice. I'm actually learning Minecraft coding. I'm creating a server, so I'm learning like this. I like never programmed before, so I'm just like learning like JSON and all this like, I don't know. It's this weird thing, but anyways, I'm making a Minecraft server, so that's fun. They use like command blocks, so you chain commands together using blocks. It's a little.
I've never done that, so I have no idea how that works.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Here's one. What do you think of the Nimbus presentation by Tobias Rucker? I think it was Tobias. Is something like that compatible to the new transaction format that's on the roadmap?
Well, the new transaction format is not finalized, so certainly if that's something we want to be adopted, we can make sure that it's compatible with the new transaction format. No, I'm not 100% convinced that we need to adopt Nimbus, but I know that I think Tobias is also behind Nimbus, if I'm not mistaken. So he's clearly making a name for himself. He's a very smart guy, a very talented guy. And so regardless if we do Nimbus or not, this is someone that I would like to have around.
Nice. I guess I haven't seen the actual presentation. Do you have any comments on actual Nimbus or?
Well, so actually, the general idea, and I'm gonna grossly oversimplify because it's quite a complex idea, but the basic idea is to add a bit of smart contract that is not into one of the input of the transaction that systems such as SLP or other system can leverage to add some feature on top of BCH. And this is quite complex, so it's gonna I think take a lot of time for everybody to wrap their head around it and really understand the ins and outs of it and make sure that this is the right approach and all of that. So right now I'd say I'm probably I'm not for or against at this point in time. I just want to know more about it.
Gotcha. Have you ever considered live streaming your coding sessions?
No, that would be very boring.
Yeah, I've seen. I watched somebody. I don't know. I forget for which coin, but yeah, it wasn't the most exciting thing. But yeah, somebody asked. Apparently, other coders like to watch people code. So
some people do. That's very strange. Like this whole streaming that exists in many spaces, like people stream themselves playing video game or coding or playing music or doing whatever. This is a very strange thing to me. I'm not at all drawn to that sphere at all. I don't understand it, but if people want to do it, that's fine. It's just it's very strange. I don't know.
Yeah, I've live streamed trying to figure out this Minecraft coding nobody watches, so and that's Minecraft. Come on. Is funding for ABC still up in the air, or has it improved?
Well, it's an ongoing
struggle.
It's an ongoing struggle, yeah.
All right, that's fair. Any updates at all you want to share, or just kind of?
Well, I don't have that much update to share right now about that. No.
Okay. What do you think?
Not that much new development on that front.
Okay, gotcha. What do you think is the best computer language to learn? Best languages? Programming language, I'm guessing.
That's a bit of a strange question because it really depends what you want to do.
Right.
If you want to do a website, you want to do like JavaScript and probably PHP or something like that for server side. I know people like to hate on PHP, but they like to hate on JavaScript as well. But let's be realistic; those are the game in town. If you want to build a website, if you want to build, some native app, then pick up whatever the native language is on the platform. If it's Android, you want to use Java. If it's iOS, you want to use Swift, probably. If you want to build a game, you probably want to do C++, because you're going to have real-time constraints. And so you cannot have like a heavy runtime with a garbage collector and all of that if you do games. It really depends what your project is and what you want to build.
Gotcha. Do you think C++ is the best language for programming Bitcoin implementations?
That's a difficult question. Like, it depends how you want to understand the question. If it was to, if we were to start everything from scratch, then I'd say probably not. Probably something like D or maybe Rust probably would be better if we were to start from scratch. But know that we have several thousands, hundreds of thousands of lines of code in C++. It's usually a pretty bad idea to rewrite everything in some other language. Because like when you start, you have this great idea and you're gonna do it like this and like that and whatnot, and all the problem with the existing system, and you're gonna do everything else so much better. But what happened in practice most often than not is that you discover why the first code base is completely fucked up to begin with by running into all the same problem that the people run when they were building the first code base that ended up turning it into the mess that it is. And so unless you're actually one of those person that build the original code base, it is highly unlikely that you're gonna rebuild another code base that is actually better. And there are many, many examples of that in the software industry. Like software developers love to think that they are gonna do the version 2.0, redo everything, and it's gonna be so much better. And almost every time it's a huge failure. And there are a few exceptions to that. One is, so I don't know if you use Linux at all or not, but you have this window, like, essentially the system that do the window manager on Linux that, essentially gives you a GUI that you can use to use your Linux system, right? The piece of infrastructure that is beyond that was a technology called X window or X11. And this is like a 30-year-old technology. And since then, we've learned a lot, and some people have done an alternative piece of technology that is called Wayland that more and more people are using on Linux now and replacing X with that newer technology. But it turns out that the people who did Wayland were actually all people that worked on X for decades, literally. And so they know extremely well why X is built the way it is, what are the limitations, what are the wrong decisions that were made and that can be made better. And this is why they were able to essentially redo it better. But it's exceedingly uncommon that it happens. And I can't think of any example where it happened where the people that did the new stuff had no involvement into the previous iteration of it. Okay. So to loop that back to Bitcoin, I think we are better off continuing with the C++ code base that we have, because we can always fool ourselves that we're gonna do, the second node software from scratch that is gonna be so much better. But what we see is that all the node software, they all have weird stuff in them, and the reason is because there are a lot of weird stuff in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Gotcha. Here's another question: Vim or Emacs? I don't know what that means.
Vim.
There you go, Vim. Yeah, I guess that's all the questions. We'll wrap it up here. Is there any last things you want to say about Bitcoin Cash in the future? Any last advice for people that are watching?
Well, Bitcoin Cash in the present. Use it.
Yeah. and use it.
Use it, get adoption. It's so we create value for the ecosystem, and it's so this whole stuff become more valuable. So,
gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amaury. A great little show.
Ciao.
Ciao. All right. Bye now.